You grew up learning that strength is silence. Emotions were whispers you sent underground, locked away in rooms no one ever visited. From the moment you first scraped your knee and cried, you heard, "Be brave, don't cry." That admonishment wasn't kindness, it was the first brick in the wall sealing your inner world. But why do societies build these walls? Why do we train ourselves to hide, compartmentalize, and even shame our own feelings? At the heart of this lies a paradox. The very communities that promise belonging demand emotional exile. You yearn for connection, yet you're taught that revealing vulnerability risks rejection. You learn to paint an exterior of composure even as your interior corrals every pang of sadness, anger, or desire. Carl Jung called this the conflict between persona and shadow. The persona is the mask you wear in public, polished, acceptable, invulnerable. The shadow is every thought you're taught to suppress: shame, grief, envy, longing. Society hands you the persona as a uniform and says, "This is who you must be." But in forging that image, you fracture your soul, casting vital pieces of yourself into darkness. Friedrich Nietzsche diagnosed a similar ailment. He argued that cultural moralities, especially those rooted in shame, transform natural instincts into forbidden urges. Every instinct you learn to bury becomes a stone in the wall separating you from your own humanity. In preaching modesty, self-control, or duty, society builds ramparts around your emotional castle, claiming the high ground of civility even as it exiles your authenticity. Jean-Paul Sartre called this self-betrayal bad faith. You convince yourself the mask is the real you. You accept the social script that true strength is stoicism, that men don't cry, that women don't rage, that expressing hurt is weakness. In that lie, you imprison the genuines, voice that dared to speak when you were a child. Aldous Huxley foresaw this in his dystopian vision. A world where individuals are conditioned from birth to suppress any dissonant impulse. His characters never question the emotional architecture imposed on them, because they lack the language, even the permission, to probe their own walls. Conditioning becomes a cage so familiar you don't see the bars. Viktor Frankl, who found meaning even in a concentration camp, offers the antidote: awareness. He taught that suffering isn't just an ordeal, it's an invitation to discover the values you genuinely cherish. But to receive that invitation, you must first pry open the sealed doors of your inner fortress. Yet most of us never attempt that escape. Why? Because when you've been schooled to hide fear, pain, and desire, you come to believe those hidden parts are shameful, unworthy. You internalize a narrative that only the polished facets of your persona deserve sunlight. The rest must languish in basements of guilt. Look around. Entire industries preach self-help while reinforcing the same message. Fix yourself, but don't show your cracks. Social media filters your images. Public life filters your emotions. Yet no filter protects you from the cost. Loneliness, burnout, the gnawing feeling of being half alive. This hidden problem is more than personal. It's woven into every institution: family, school, workplace, religion. Schools reward children who behave, not those who express hurt. Workplaces celebrate emotional detachment as professionalism. Religions valorize silent martyrdom over honest lament. Across centuries and continents, the ritual remains. You train yourself to silence your humanity, and so your emotional architecture stands firm. But it's a prison. Every time you hold back a tear, you reinforce a wall. Every time you swallow a scream of anger, you cement another block. Eventually, you stop recognizing the person behind the wall. You peer through tiny barred windows of your persona and mistake the view for reality. But what if you didn't have to live this way? What if the walls weren't inevitable? What if, instead of conditioning you to hide, society taught you to integrate your persona and your shadow, to see strength in vulnerability, wisdom in pain, freedom in honest feeling? The hidden roots of your emotional walls aren't mystical. They're carved by centuries of social edicts, philosophical dogmas, and psychological defense mechanisms. Each command to toughen up or keep quiet became a load-bearing beam in the fortress of your isolation. Understanding these roots is not an academic exercise. It's the key to dismantling your prison. Because unless you trace each beam back to its source, in childhood reprimands, in cultural taboos, in personal trauma, you cannot uproot it. You'll only repaint the walls or cover cracks with plaster, never truly break free. Before you can tear down the architecture, you must map it. You must name the social forces that taught you to fear your own tears. You must recognize the philosophical lies that convinced you vulnerability equals weakness. And you must confront the psychological defenses that have kept your heart corralled for too long. Only then can you begin to pry open the sealed doors. Only then can you reclaim the hidden rooms where your shamed emotions await. And only then can you envision an emotional blueprint built on authenticity, where walls aren't barriers, but spaces for integration and growth. Are you ready to explore how these walls shape your every thought, every relationship, every decision? You carry your emotional walls everywhere you go, unaware of the subtle pressure they exert. Each day, you navigate life's labyrinth through narrow hallways carved by suppressed feelings. At first glance, nothing seems amiss. Your routine is intact, your relationships appear functional, your work performance remains steady. But underneath, invisible cracks form in the very foundation of your existence. Consider the way you interpret feedback at work. A simple critique triggers an amygdala hijack, a surge of stress hormones that convinces you your competence is under siege. You see only rejection, not an opportunity to improve. Over time, your neural circuits reinforce this threat response. What began as a fleeting sting of embarrassment hardens into a permanent assumption. Any criticism equals personal failure. Now, your emotional architecture automatically filters out constructive advice and cements self-doubt as a default state. Or take intimacy. You want closeness, yet you recoil the moment someone edges too close to your hidden rooms. You label genuine concern as intrusion, affection as pity, curiosity as judgment. This is confirmation bias at work. Your mind hunts for evidence that your inner world is unsafe. Every reassurance is dismissed. Every gesture of kindness is reinterpreted to fit the narrative you've constructed. Consequently, relationships become shallow facades, never venturing beyond the guarded foyer of your persona. Look at decision-making. Are you driven by passion or by the fear of making a wrong choice? Loss aversion. A cognitive bias that magnifies the pain of failure looms large in your psyche. You avoid risks, even creative risks, because your emotional blueprint equates novelty with danger. Meanwhile, you watch others seize opportunities, wondering, why can't I be as bold? The answer is that your emotional walls deprive you of the very freedom needed to explore uncharted territories. On a neurological level, chronic emotional suppression rewires your brain's connectivity. Studies show that bottling emotions consistently activates the insula and anterior cingulate cortex, areas linked to pain and distress, like a car engine idling in red zone. Over time, this constant internal pressure elevates baseline cortisol, degrading hippocampal neurons and impairing memory formation. You forget important details, birthdays, promises, personal goals. You become disconnected from your own narrative, as if your life is slipping through the cracks you've created. Society itself reinforces these hidden consequences. Emotional labor, the unpaid, invisible work of managing your own and others' emotions, becomes your second tayu. You suppress tears in public, mask anxiety behind polite smiles, and script small talk to hide the turmoil within. Colleagues and friends praise your composure, unaware that each compliment builds another layer of masonry around your soul. You earn social capital, but at the cost of authenticity. This architecture also distorts empathy. You've learned that exposing pain is taboo, so you unconsciously signal to others that vulnerability is off limits. Your emotional walls become social walls, infecting your circles with an epidemic of silent suffering. You sense people holding back, partners, siblings, coworkers. Yet you don't realize you are both cause and consequence. A culture of isolation breeds more isolation, and soon loneliness morphs from rare visitor into unwelcome roommate.